motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Been first and second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion and a second, not a first and a second.
Motion and a second.
Right. Robert's rules. You learned something today.
Approved unanimously. 2, community announcements. Are there any community announcements?
Yeah, I've got one for Kathy. Kathy's not here because her son Doug Birdie died apparently of a heart attack Saturday evening. She's a little busy right now. Anyway, we have a really great Mojave Transportation Museum program coming up on the 15th, Saturday the 15th. Kern County has the first county-owned airport and the first county-owned airport system in the United States. And Barbara Schultz, I think most of us know her, she writes all kinds of great books about Southern California aviation. She's just written a new book, Pioneering Aviation in Kern County. And she's going to make a presentation on it. And it should be interesting if for you who don't know what Plane Crazy is. It's a monthly event, third Saturday of every month here at the airport from in the summer 9 to 1, free. Get out, wander around with your kids, a family event. Look at the airplanes, touch the airplanes, talk to the pilots. And at 11 in this room, we have a really great program. We get some unbelievable speakers in here. And we even occasionally get the FA-18 pilots wander in and take part in the program. And everybody from little kids to the old guys that used to keep the airplanes in the air. And that's all I have.
Are there any other community announcements? We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Right here.
Oh, you.
Sorry, I kind of popped up out of sight. I'm Amanda Barnes, Kern County. I recently had a meeting with Whitney Hughes from the East Kern Family Resource Center down Cap K down the street. They're going after a really great grant for the community of Mojave that will, should they receive the grant, will create a community center, a resource center, and an after-school program for the students here in Mojave. Currently, they're in the application phase. It's not due yet. It'll be due in a few weeks. But she asked for my help to reach out to whoever I have contact with, mainly the airport, because she's a little bit unfamiliar. They just need support. If anybody wants to partner or find out more about the program and how they can be a success, that will make their application much more competitive, the more community support that they have. So I left her card and my card up at the front there if anybody, either as an individual or with your business, would like to find out or maybe be a part of, you guys don't have to do anything for the grant, but be a part of to support this initiative, it would be great.
The person you need to contact is Susie Clipperton at Mojave Unified
Yes.
School District.
Yes,
she's
on the list, definitely.
Queen, yes.
That reminded me, that speaking of grants, the Kern County Parks Department is trying to they've got a chance to get a big grant to fix up Mojave East Park, which is the one over here by the high school. And they've been having some public meetings, the Mojave Chamber of Commerce meeting at noon on Thursday the 27th at the Mariah Comfort Inn. I love that name. Sounds like some kind of a business in Korea. But anyway, they're having they're going to make a presentation on this grant. You got it, didn't you? They're going to make a presentation on this grant, and that could really be great. We have 2 parks in this community, and this is probably the main one. That's where we have occasionally have Gold Rush days. It's used a lot, and if we get some more money and more facilities, it'll be a benefit to the community. So if you have any ideas on this, come to the meeting, have a great lunch from Stokens, and we'll see you there. Thanks.
Any other community announcements? Got my glasses on this time. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and non-controversial, will be approved by one motion unless a member of board, staff, or public requests to move an item to an action items. Are there anybody in the public would like a consent agenda removed? Anybody on the board? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And there are none opposed. Moving on to item 4, action items. Brown Armstrong Accountancy Corporation engagement letter, staff report, please.
Good afternoon. So this is our new letter for this current fiscal year to begin the audit process. Brown Armstrong likes to start a little bit early. So we ask your approval. I don't think there's any, unless there's any up for any questions on this particular topic. It's pretty routine at this point.
Is there any public comment? Any director comment? I'll accept a motion to accept Brown Armstrong Accountancy Corporation.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
A motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And there are none opposed. B, Special District Risk Management Authority, SDRMA, 2019 Board Election Staff Report.
I unfortunately am not familiar with any of these candidates. I don't know who any of the directors are, so I unfortunately can't make any recommendations on who would like to,
They're all in Northern California.
I read their resumes, and I have, Patrick was one,
Patrick was the only one who actually reached out
And-
separately.
there's an incumbent, I want to say Swan, but I could be wrong. But I'll make his recommendations.
You want to make that motion to,
Yeah, hang on here.
Second?
you want to give us the names real quick?
Swan, Billboard.
No, I'm sorry.
The incumbents are Swan and Cypress, right?
No, Swan and Patrick.
Patrick O'Rourke,
Those are the two I'll make the motion.
and I will second his motion.
A motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are none opposed. Good with that?
Is there any public comment for that one?
And now that we've approved it.
Item C, Fiscal 2019 Budget Approval Staff Report.
So for this year's budget, there's a couple items that I want to highlight. Since we conducted our budget workshop just last week, hopefully this is still relatively fresh in your memories. The major items here to call out really are the reserve designations. So we had a whole wish list of items that totaled around 8 million. We kind of got that list down to 5.8 million under the reserve designations. The key ones that are included here for this year's budget, this upcoming year's budget, are the Taxiway Charlie Rehab Project, which I'm happy to say that we're at least on the FA's list this year, next fiscal year. So we're starting the process now. We're going through the PCI analysis now. We'll start the environmental here very soon, and then if the budget's approved, what I'd like to do is engage the engineers to actually start the design work and the pre-engineering work for Charlie. So that's kind of the big news, I suppose, on this year's budget. We're estimating that's going to be in the neighborhood of a $10 million project. It's strictly rehab. It's not going to be a relocation in this case. It's strictly rehab. So our portion of that is going to be 10%, roughly. So that's the big ticket item here, plus the carryover for the Perimeter Road, which the board had already approved. That's actually going to carry forward into the next fiscal year at the expense level. So the contract is underway. They're having a pre-construction meeting next Friday. We'll do some work this fiscal year, but most of it will be paid out next fiscal year. The other major item under the operating budget, if you recall that we discussed during the workshop, was depreciation. So the end total under the excess and deficit revenue over expense certainly doesn't look very appealing, but it's largely because it's really all because depreciation is now in this budget. So this is something the auditors had recommended last year going through the audit, is that we start including the depreciation in the budget, which we haven't been because it's a non-cash item, but that's why it kind of skews the results overall. Those are the major things that I wanted to highlight, unless the board has any discussion items that they wanted to.
The Cal City grant,
Custody grant is under the operating expense. It's just above the total operating expense.
but I see it, but it shouldn't be 100 grand.
Okay.
It should be 50 grand for this budget year that we're looking at, and the 50 grand from last year should be expensed last year and rolled over into a liability account. Add that plus this year's budget, that's 100 grand.
Okay.
So we need to make certain that we do that appropriately for accounting purposes, and I suggest you ask Mr. Browse to get that done correctly.
Yeah, because it looks like 100.
Yeah, we're not gonna, I even I wouldn't vote for that.
What?
So
Yeah.
I would propose that change. The operating budget, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I can have a
That's real quick, is there any public comment? There's none, go ahead, Mr.
So just so the public knows that from an operating standpoint, we should have about $120,000 positive cash flow, roughly. And the other items are projects, you know, with grants and or other projects that we've been looking at doing for a long time. We're spending reserve money for those. And the target that we want to keep cash in the bank, with all these expenses, we're still going to have the target amount of cash we want to keep in the bank.
Not likely. It'll be slightly less, but what my hope is that we want to be able to include everything, because so many of these projects are in the works, like the perimeter road, like the property acquisition. If we're successful in closing a new land lease, which next fiscal year I'm fairly confident we'll close at least one of the three that we've been working. What I'd like to do is come back to the board for a mid-year review and take another look at the reserve designations specifically. I don't anticipate many changes to the operating budget if we want to do it a mid-year update, but most likely the reserve designations will make some changes.
I guess what I'm getting at is if we have this FAA grant project that's going to run us about $500 grand cash out of our pocket, and we were to spend all the $2.683 million, if we were to do that, we would still be left with sufficient cash.
We'd still be left with...
That you would consider that to still be sufficient cash left in the bank?
I'd like to have a little bit more than that. We'd still have about $3 million, but I would expect that in terms of major infrastructure projects, I don't think we're going to have another $1 million project for several more years with that grant. So I guess the answer to your question is we will fall below the point in which I'm comfortable in reserves, but I'm confident that over the next 2 to 3 years we'll be able to build that back up. I think the time to make these investments is now. I don't want some of these investments. I don't think it's a good idea to put them off any longer, especially if we're successful getting the Charlie project.
Is there any other director comment on the budget? I'll accept a motion for the fiscal year 2019 or 19 and 20 budget approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And there are none. Resolution passes. Moving on to item D, resolution authorizing the application and borrowing of funds from the California Department of Transportation Local Airport and Loan Program staff report.
So it shouldn't be a surprise, this topic has come up several times in the past couple of years, the fact that we have this borrowing restriction at all. We've tried twice now with Amanda's help in this last round going through iBank, and Amanda made great progress on the pre-application process, and they put a stop to it saying they basically ran out of funds, I guess.
Who's they, the state?
iBank.
Is
So
that
they're
the
going through-
Caltrans thing?
Yeah, no, this is, iBank is not Caltrans. There's two separate programs,
Oh,
but they're
okay.
both state-controlled programs. So iBank is now going through an audit. They made a decision not to take on any new loans, and then came after that, basically saying that because these funds would be used for a private company, we would be on a completely separate list under iBank. I think the chances of securing anything through iBank are slim to none at this point. So Caltrans does have a program. Their coffers are significantly less than what iBank has available for lending. And they don't know whether a hangar purchase or a hangar build would even qualify, but we won't know until we go through the application process. So the only thing I'm asking the board to approve today is to allow me to apply. If we're successful securing a loan, I'll come back to the board and see if the board wants to accept that loan.
How come the resolution reads application and borrowing of funds? Then basically you just want to apply. So you want a resolution authorizing you to apply to borrow funds.
To sign the project application and loan agreement and all other necessary project documents related to the loan. I think it's simply just for the application itself. So if you want us to reword this, we can. But all I intend to do right now is apply for the loan just to see if we're even eligible.
Anybody want to make that motion?
Make that motion.
One second.
iBank is a government, is a state bank. It's owned by the state.
Correct.
So it's the equivalent of Moscow State Bank, but in California.
Well,
Just wanted to clear that up.
To
Clear that up.
This is Caltrans, I think. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
It's been motioned and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? There are none. Moving on to item E, resolution declaring certain property surplus to the needs of the district and authorizing disposition of the property.
This is all relatively small items, just computer equipment. It's something that the board is required to authorize before we can dispose of anything. It's mostly phones, old landline phones as well, and the light gun, which hasn't been working in 100 years. We got a new one quite a while ago, so I don't think there's anything controversial in this.
I was kind of curious, I really am curious for this. They have a new one, correct? I would just be curious to know when is the last time they actually had to use it. I don't need the answer. It's just, as a pilot, I'm just curious.
The day of Straddle launch, they used it because they had an old Falker or something come in with no radios.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
They
so you were
did
there.
use
I'm
it
impressed.
that day. I was in
So
the tower that day.
they used the green light.
They used the green
Right
light.
on.
Because he had no radio.
Well, I'm glad we got to utilize it.
Was this Fokker a sore loser from World War II or what?
Yeah, I don't know. Is there any public comment? Is there any director comment? I'll accept the motion in a second.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
It's been motioned and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? There are none. Number 5, move on to staff reports, financial reports, please.
These are the financials for month ending April 30th, 2019. You'll see our the overall balance has increased $230,000. We've got our Kern County taxes for April, so you'll see the increase. That's where the bulk of the increase came from. As well as we did sell 110,000 gallons of fuel, which is the best month we've had this year. So a lot of F-18s, just a lot of activity happening in the month of April. And as far as the AR report, we don't have anyone on the over 90 days right now. And the gym members that we're working on, they did just recently sign a contract with one of our tenants for a year. So they're going to be subsidizing their employees for membership. So hopefully to see that once that gets underway, that we'll see the work in our favor.
Thank you. CEO report, please. Was there questions?
I have no comment on the gym.
Thank God.
Wow.
Look for that star just like
I was
tonight.
letting you get away without having that happen, and you killed it yourself.
So on the CEO report, just a couple things to highlight. So I mentioned to the board last meeting, Shelby and Christian are joining us as our Brookings Fellows this summer, so we're delighted to have them here. We unfortunately had to say goodbye to our longtime civil engineer, Dave Russell. We had a retirement party for him. He will still be available, which I'm sure will take advantage of that when we have questions come up, since he's been here for about 30 years, I think, or so here. We had the initial STARS implementation meeting. They actually came out here to do the FTI install, which, believe it or not, is done. So that's actually done in advance of even having the equipment. So we're surprised they did a reverse order because that was supposed to happen in October. So the radar upgrade is well underway. We're still going through the contract piece. They should be sending us the final contract any day now. Hopefully we'll get that signed and get the money over to them. So I had an interesting couple of days in Washington last week. ComStack is a advisory group to the FAA, and it's usually been, for the past several years, it's been mostly the commercial space industry. So operators, spaceports, a couple of users. they're inviting more aviation type organizations on ComStack. They might have an interest potentially in engaging Mojave a little bit more since we play in both worlds. So I'll keep the board posted on that to see if that does happen. The requirement would essentially be twice a year 2 trips to DC here for ComStack. Let's see. I think that's all really I was going to highlight on the CEO report unless there was questions.
Any board comment?
Remind me what the AIAA conference is.
It's the, I don't remember what it stands for. AIAA, it's the big independent aeronautics.
Yeah, I dealt with that a little bit in DC, American Institute for Aviation and Astronautics, I think, is that it? Nobody?
And
Google it.
And what's their role? You were invited to speak there.
Yeah.
What's their role?
Overall?
Yeah, overall.
So, I mean, a lot of the organizations here belong to AIAA. They're pretty active in terms of, setting new directions, new policies, or, at least the topics for policies coming up within industry. It's a well-known trade association organization for
I got the
aviation
CEO
airlines.
that one time, whose name I can't remember. I can't remember why.
So the panel that they asked me to moderate, the intent was to make it very Mojave specific, and that's changed a lot because it conflicts with the Paris Air Show, and a lot of our customers are not going to Paris that week. So unless the board's okay with me going to Paris instead, I'll stick to my commitment to go to Dallas.
Pay your own way, you take your own time off. I'd love to go there.
Any other board comment? There are no board committees. Item D, Board of Directors. This portion of the meeting is reserved for board members to comment on items not on the agenda. Is there any board member comments? Move on to item 6, public comment on items not on the agenda. Members of the public may make comments to the board if items not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? If not, thank you all for coming. We'll move into closed session.